Citizens of football land, welcome back to the Badlands feed. It's Buck the Trend. I'm your host, Dan Essien. Today we're getting into the trend zone. So I'm going to take you through some of what I noticed in week one around the league, some of what I noticed with the Jets, of course, in their week one matchup with the Buffalo Bills. And then we're just going to cover some topics that are kind of leading to some patterns that I think are probably going to keep up for the rest of the season and probably lead into next year's draft and things like that. So, so we're calling this one the trend zone. So let's get into it. Why don't we? So we got new positions, and some of this is going to be related to some of the traits that you saw in the draft guide. So you might have remembered the ultimate trait, the ultimate weapon trait, which we kind of had for running back, wide receiver, which is guys, that can really do it all. So you're looking at guys that can be ball carriers out of the backfield. At the same time, they're just as effective as pass catchers coming, from out wide. So those type of players have definitely made their presence known in week one. And I think there's particular ones to keep an eye on because I think it bears some importance to where teams will be placing their value for certain positions. So all offseason, some of the conversation was around what players are actually going to get paid at the running back position. And I think a lot of NFL teams were unwilling to pay running backs. And I think part of it is the style of usage, in addition to, of course, the overall aggregate usage and the wear and tear and things like that. I think there are certain styles of running back that are going to be more valued. And the reason why I say that is because of the trends of things that are happening with players like Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. So, it's very early. It's an early sample size, but I think the style of usage is something to really keep an eye on. So, the Lions did, some varied things to get the balls in Jahmyr Gibbs' hands, but, they probably could have given more touches than what they did. Atlanta did similar things with Bijan in week one, but you can see that they really spelled them with more traditional running backs. So it's like Jahmyr Gibbs is the weapon and David Montgomery is the lead back, and Bijan's a weapon and Tyler Algier might be the lead back. I think that is kind of more what you're going to start to see from teams as they get, their hands on players that are that talented and that gifted, which is going to be rare. There's not going to be a lot of those type of players, but I think what the difference between what we're seeing now versus what we've seen in the past is that they're not going to try to pigeonhole like a superior athlete or someone who, has these type of traits to a role that might just, put wear and tear on the body and render them useless. They're instead going to try to spell them with a player who's going to take more of the hits, so that they can use them in a variety of different ways, get them out in space and let them cook. So I think that's where the position's probably going. I don't think that teams understand that entirely. I think it's just going to be kind of a sloppy progression towards that, like it usually is when positions start to change in the NFL. It's interesting because I think a guy like Christian McCaffrey really became more of a traditional back, and obviously in his, time at Stanford, he was a traditional back really, and it's kind of going into the NFL where, he was great in special teams as well as a returner, but really getting to the league, they're kind of like, great, we can use you in these variety of different ways, like a Marshall Faulk and things like that. And I think, at this point, with San Francisco, just the way that Kyle Shanahan calls plays and runs his offense, he can do anything with any player at any position. But I think he's found creative ways to use McCaffrey as well. And you see he had an incredible game in week one. But I think those type of players and, Alvin Kamara, I think is really the genesis of all this. I think the team is just trying to figure out how to use those type of players. And I think you're seeing a lot of strategic changes. I think Mike McDaniel is showing pretty cool usage of Tyreek Hill, which of course Tyreek Hill is not a running back, or he's not really that type of player, but I think he's the type of player that you do use. Of course, his career started off with a bunch of jet sweeps when he was a member of the Kansas City Chiefs, and then that turned into a much larger role because of how much of a playmaker they saw that he could be. I think you're going to start to see that with these type of players that are kind of in between. So, of course, we see that all the time with Debo. Same team as Christian McCaffrey, which is, obviously why that offense is so potent. But I think that this kind of trend is going to lead to really just kind of a new position, which is really that kind of hybrid running back wide receiver role, almost like a big slot, but like a big slot that can run versus a big slot that can block. I think that's where that kind of ultimate weapon is leaning towards, and I think in discussing now, a player that can block, that could be in that ultimate weapon spot. I think that's kind of the next thing to look out for, because I think if teams are starting to figure out how to use H backs in more creative ways. Like I mentioned it earlier, the way that Mike McDaniel uses Tyreek Hill, in motion, knows that DBs are probably not going to keep up if he has him moving at the snap with his ability to accelerate and burst. I think you're going to start to see. Similarly, coaches are going to figure out different ways to be using that H-back position. I think Kyle Shanahan, again, was well ahead of his time with this usage of Kyle Juszczyk, with getting kind of a guy that's a pretty serious athlete, faster than people would think, stronger than most at the position, but, somebody that can, get open and make plays, but also block really well, and somebody that you can't really key on for a particular thing. They can kind of be that chess piece for you. I think that's kind of the next position that's probably going to be entering more of a hybrid mode is, hey, I want somebody that I can move around the formation that can, get me the blocks that I need, but that can also, go out on the flat and break a bunch of tackles and get me some yak. Somebody that I can put in motion, and if they're in motion against a linebacker, and I can, I key on man coverage, and I know that I can get him isolated on somebody that he's faster than, more athletic than, then great. Yeah, I'm going to take that matchup, put him on a wheel route, where he burns a linebacker or something like that. Like, I think that's what you're going to see teams start to do in these ultimate weapon roles. Is say like, great, I could put somebody who's an athletic slot, somebody like a Debo or somebody like a Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan, and I'm just gonna figure out ways to get the ball in their hands in space, move them across the formation, do what I need to do, and then a guy that's more of like a blocking ultimate weapon, like a Kyle Juszczyk or players like that. And one player that I really want to give a shout out to, or a couple actually, that are going to be in this upcoming draft class, Jaheim Bell and Jatavian Sanders. I think they're really those type of ultimate weapon type of players. I think Brock Bowers is for sure like that as well, but I think Brock Bowers will probably fit in the NFL as more of a traditional tight end. But I think Jaheim Bell is kind of that perfect type of tweener, and I think that will really help his stock for some teams, because they're going to be trying to diversify their offense and just get more ways to attack defenses with different matchups. And I think the more that you can get players like that on the field, where you can threaten the defense in multiple ways, they can't really key on a particular skill set from that type of player moving around the formation. They're really this player is moving anywhere, and they could be doing anything to help their offense. So I think that's kind of the next step for those two positions. So I think it's an interesting thing to watch out with running back prospects is, can this guy be effective in the pass game? Are they good? Do they have good hands? Because if they're an electric athlete, this speed and acceleration is paramount in this, but also, of course, the agility. Yeah, if they're a superior athlete and they can catch the ball well, naturally, they're going to be in that ultimate weapon role. And I think that's going to be a lot more prominent as time goes along in the NFL. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that. I think we saw some pretty cool things from Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan week one that I'm sure will continue to expand as the season goes along. So definitely something to watch there. They could be really changing the NFL right before our eyes, and perhaps the NFL teams are right in taking them so high. So yeah, something to watch there. And yeah, I wanted to talk about some Jets things before I kind of close out with some topics to check up on that we've covered in the past. The Jets pass rush was ridiculous. It could have been better, honestly. They've had better weeks, but you can tell the defensive line is still key, and they're still the driving unit on this team. John Franklin Myers, told you guys about that to kind of keep your eyes there. I think on Twitter before the season as someone who kind of gets forgotten. He's still one of the more important players along the defensive line. He showed that this week, 8 pressures and a sack. He's just like reliable, and we all knew with Carl Lawson out, that he was going to be able to get more time on the field, particularly on early downs, being that early down defensive end. And once again, he dominated in that role. The guy's he's consistent. He does it every week. So, he had a great game, and will we continue to look for him to continue that effectiveness. I don't think with Carl Lawson kind of returning to the lineup, I think that they were just going to balance things a little bit more. I think he's such a good run defender, John Franklin Myers, that they're probably going to just continue to keep him at defensive end on early downs. No reason to change something that's not broken, really. I think Carl Lawson's going to affect more on third downs, and he may affect maybe Jermaine Johnson's early down snaps, but even that, I don't think that it'll affect Jermaine's because I think Jermaine is a better run defender. So, we might see Carl Lawson more in pass rush situations, and that's where he's most effective. So, it'll be interesting to see how the Jets balance it with Carl Lawson's return. Jermaine Johnson was great, picked up a sack. We kind of went over the great scheme of that sack in film room this week, so please make sure you check that out. I think he's obviously trending upwards. Quentin Jefferson looked great, 2 sacks. He's really dreaming in dreamland right now. This is exactly what he wanted when he joined this defense. So you could see that he's pretty effective in a kind of an aggressive style front. I think apart from the Jets pass rush, there are obviously tons of incredible moments in this game. Of course, everyone's favorite, or one of everyone's favorites from week 1 was the Garrett Wilson catch. I think Garrett Wilson is just one of one. He's a special player, and I think it's obviously super disappointing to see Aaron Rodgers go down knowing what he could have done with Garrett Wilson. But I think the special thing about Garrett Wilson is that he's willing to adapt his game to any situation. And you can see just the style, the type of play that he made on that fade. He's a player that's going to scrap for everything, and he's a player that's going to, adapt to whatever situation arises. And he literally just did exactly that on that play, which is cool. I see where the ball's heading. I can adapt. I can figure this out, make a play, score a touchdown. I think he's just a special player, and I'm going to be interested to see how he figures out production again in a similar situation to last season. I think he's going to make it happen somehow, some way, one way or another. So I think that's just Garrett Wilson's nature. So cool to see there. Also good to see him kind of taking more of a leadership role on the sideline as well. I wanted to end with some topics that we've gone over in the lead up to the season. Things just wanted to check up on. Some rookies that we loved in the draft guide. Jalen Carter looked insane week 1, unblockable, getting by everybody. He's obviously going to be a special player. It's kind of cool to see. It's almost like he's pushing Fletcher Cox a bit. Fletcher Cox looked incredible, particularly late in the game against the Patriots. So it's kind of wild to see that. Obviously, Fletcher's probably making him a better player than the other way around, but it's cool to kind of see him continue to raise his game with such a promising young player next to him. So, Jalen Carter looks the part. He looks legit. So it'd be cool to see him grow into whatever he's going to grow into. Zay Flowers, I'd have to point him out. He looked incredible. I think Lamar Jackson's going to obviously love him. Just the outlet that he has with Zay Flowers, being able to get him the ball in space and seeing him, just eat up yards, eat up defenders with his route running. He just makes up so much ground so quick. He just has great burst. He's going to be a special player for the Ravens, and it's nice to see them kind of operating in this new offense. It wasn't super clean in week 1. Nobody's offense was, but you can kind of see the potential there. I think Monken's going to figure some great stuff out for how to use Flowers. Exciting offense. I want to see what they grow into as the season progresses with Zay in the fold there. Jordan Addison had a great week 1. Very interested to see him. I think by the time you guys hear this podcast, we'll know what he did in week 2, perhaps in the Thursday night game. But he looks promising as well. Looks really good. Has great running mate with Justin Jefferson. So Yeah, we're gonna really see some good stuff out of Jordan Addison this year, most likely, particularly with that style of offense and giving Kirk Cousins another outlet that's not Justin Jefferson. His route running still looks great. So yeah, just another player to keep an eye on there. And then yeah, Jim Schwartz. We went over Jim Schwartz in the DC tiers. I mentioned this on Twitter. Greg had him at an A tier. Explained why. Just everywhere he goes, he can build dominant defenses. And he took some time to kind of get ready for this new opportunity with the Browns in the previous years. And man, he looks like he schemed up a heck of a game in week 1, man. So shout out to Jim Schwartz. That was outstanding game plan. They shut down the Bengals offense entirely, and you can see that he has great plans for Myles Garrett as well, moving him around the formation. I think that's one of the really important parts of having such a dominant edge player in Myles Garrett, and like the type of physical player he is. He's not the type of player that you're just like, great, I have to leave him at the edge and hope he has 8 million different types of moves to get home, and he does, which is great. But I think he's the type of player that you want to move around, and you seeing him like mock dribbling the ball between his legs as he's about to just whip the center. Like, come on, man. It's just not fair. It's just not fair. He didn't have to do him like that. Man, Myles Garrett's going to have a big year. We might be looking at some crazy numbers at the end of the season with the way that Jim Schwartz is using them. So, yeah, shout out to Jim Schwartz. Shout out to Greg on that great call coming into the season, knowing what he was going to be able to put up with this Browns defense. And we'll see if it continues. Again, it's just week 1, but just some things to keep an eye on there. Some things to keep checking up on. We'll keep checking up on tiny edges as well. I was talking a lot about them in the preseason. Nick Herbig was showing some great stuff. Of course, like Nolan Smith on the Eagles also, was popping every little bit as well. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on the tiny edges. I'm sure they'll continue to rise up the charts as they make the waves and on their individual teams. But yeah, there's some things we'll continue to check up on as the season progresses. So yeah, that's the trend zone this week. Keeping it nice and short as we head into the big parts of this week, getting ready for Jets Cowboys on Sunday. It's going to be a big one. So I can't wait to see what the Jets are able to do, how they're able to rally after the big win in week 1, get things back together, get their emotions back in check, and then hopefully focus up for this next game. But yeah, the league is changing. We're going to keep following it as the season goes along. We'll try to keep doing these trend zones weekly and see what these NFL teams are cooking up and what the direction that these different positions and offenses and defenses are going in. So yeah, that's it for this week. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.